Sure.
Yeah. There she comes.
Yeah, here she comes.
Okay. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Edie.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Good to see you. It's been a while. I hope all things are well with you.
Oh, yeah, things are going okay, I guess.
Good.
To be expected.
Sure, you've been busy.
Oh, every day there's something.
Yeah.
Wow.
How about everybody else? Everybody else is good?
Yep.
Yep.
Good.
Waiting it out. Deb, are you working in a medical setting right now?
I am doing, I have a few private patients that I'm looking after that are elderly, that are home. So, you know, they've got medical issues to begin with, and you know, it's kind of hard to, you have to do doctor's visits by telemed and, you know, everything else. But,
Gosh.
you know, and then go to doctor's appointments are kind of a challenge, but, you know, you have to kind of decipher what really needs to be seen and done, and what can wait and what can be a telemed.
Right. Oh, keep them safe. My gosh. So, do we have everyone? And then plus observing, we had Kate Hewitt from the Connecticut Examiner. Is that right? Okay.
I mean, I was hoping Ray would join us, but I don't see him answering my email or anything. So, let's start, and maybe he'll show up. We'll see. And I haven't heard back from Bud. He might still be out in Utah. I don't know. So, well,
Yeah, it
let's
sounded like
call
Bud
it
was
to
spending the time out there, but we're all remote.
Yeah. Let's call it to order at 7:07. Do we have approval of the April 16th minutes?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay. So we can move right on to Cheryl's report on communication.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for giving feedback on the draft letter going out to property owners, business owners, and residents. That letter, and if I didn't hear from you, I assumed you didn't have suggestions or changes. So that letter was written in a way that it will be sent out after a few things were accomplished. One, a subcommittee being set up to look at the zoning issue. So that's been done. So that's one thing. That the survey and SWOT analysis is available on the EDC website. That's also now on there. And the other thing referenced in the letter, which we are just waiting on, is the CERC feasibility final report available on the EDC website. So my understanding from Howard is that Advanced CT is just slowed down a little bit because they're very involved in Reopen Connecticut. So right now the plan is that that letter, it can either go out with something saying watch for the feasibility study results on the EDC website, or I can wait for that to happen.
I have a call in to Courtney, who's our lead contact, on something else, and I'll ask her, Cheryl, and then I'll get back to you maybe, and then you will know when it's coming, and you could decide what to do at that point.
Okay.
Is that okay? Yeah.
That sounds
I have
great.
a call in her. She's supposed to call me back. I should hear from her probably tomorrow, Monday, I would assume. So as soon as I do, I'll get back to you, and then you could decide which way you want to go.
Very good. And the other thing is, I saw on the EDC minutes that you all are sending out something to the participants in the SWOT analysis and doing the survey. So I can piggyback on that. Whoever's putting together that email list, I can piggyback on that and send out the letter as well. Is that possible?
Okay, yeah, I don't, we're in the same boat as you are with that, waiting for the feasibility study,
Okay.
because we also referenced that. So what you would need from, you want to piggyback on our list. I'll check with Justin's kind of the honcho of that. So I'll check with him about providing that list to you and get back to you on that too, okay?
Okay, and I can also talk with Michelle in Tim's office
Yeah.
as to other ways to do that. The other
Right.
thing I've done is put together a very brief article for the June issue of the Events Magazine out of Town Hall. So that also says, look at the website for findings.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. It's a lot of work. Anyone else have any questions or suggestions or? I think Ray is trying to get on board here. I sent him the link.
Hey, Cheryl, what's that town hall magazine called? I was typing and I missed it.
It's called Events, EVEN.
Events.
Yes, yeah, like
Okay.
special events. Is this called events?
Town puts it out, comes out once,
Okay. Yeah, I know what it is.
Yeah.
Now that I heard it.
Cheryl, I also have a list of email addresses of people that attended our presentation.
Oh, okay.
I could send that to you. It's
right.
in an Excel document, so you should be able to
Oh,
just
perfect.
copy paste it.
So Cheryl, will the information from the SWOT and the survey be going to business owners as well as the people whose emails that you have?
Yes, so there's one letter that will go out to everyone, and that letter will say, go to the EDC webpage for those results. And those are on there now, Deb, ready to see.
Okay.
So there were
But those results are going to be in this publication?
No, because it's too lengthy. So we give the highlights, we give, I should probably pull up
Executive
the letter
summary or
to look at it. Sort of the highlights of what the findings were, and then what our next steps are.
Okay, because I just feel like the findings from the survey and the SWOT are completely different. And I just wondered which one is carrying more weight, because I think in the SWOT, there was mention of stakeholders. And I'm a little confused as to who is a stakeholder and why there's so much more weight on that material rather than what is in the survey that Old Lyme residents took.
I'm not sure that's correct. I mean, I don't think there's anyone's weighted them. They're different. What the resident and business survey is just that, a survey of all the residents and businesses. The SWOT was by invitation, and the only reason it was by invitation was we wanted to make sure what's advanced CT recommended. You wanted to make sure that you have a very good cross-section of people. And we wanted to make sure we invited large companies, small companies, nonprofits, people from the art community, clergy. So the idea was to get a very good, make sure we had a cross-section.
Right, but
And-
I feel like a large part of what is moving forward, the driving fact of changing zoning is all related to the SWOT wants.
I'm
And the
not sure
survey.
I don't think
No,
that's
not
correct.
really. No. I mean, we've had multiple people saying that they want to see, places to downsize that's next to a town center in the survey. Townspeople
think so.
are interested in that.
I don't think so. I disagree. I believe that there is some sort of driving factor that is suddenly, I joined this committee because I thought it was beautification of Halls Road, enhancement of Halls Road. Now it's like a housing authority.
No, it's not a housing authority. No, it's
What do we have? I mean,
looking
but
at the
we're-
full picture.
I mean, this is based off of data, right? I mean, I know that calling it a housing authority is definitely a reach, but Howard, we had a specific question in that survey, and that Circ did, and my memory was that with regards to housing, it was a little bit unclear, right? It was kind of, we
Well,
ended up
people-
deciding that
Yes, people were against, there's a large majority of people who were against affordable housing. When it came to Halls Road, that was a little bit mixed, but when you asked people specific questions about it, they favored certain housing options. So there were a lot of people who weighed in on that.
So, I mean, I don't have the report in front of me right now.
But, and I would also add that if you put survey information together with all the other things that the Halls Road Committee did, open houses, the 80-something people that we talked to at the Midsummer Festival, if you added that in, there was overwhelming support for housing that would allow seniors to downsize and young people to wanted to stay in Old Lyme after school.
I'm sorry, I completely disagree with that. I looked at all of the information and I just feel like the committee is just suddenly, there's no talk of retail anymore, obviously, because of what's going on. And now suddenly we're changing zoning because we want housing on Halls Road, whereas you're 156 and the beach area that's going to have water and sewer.
What
Perfect place.
information did you look at? You just said the information I just gave you was wrong, and I just told you that we talked to 80-something people at the Midsummer Festival, and overwhelmingly, that's what they said. What's wrong with
So
that
that's
part?
not, that's just people walking by with,
Well, it was also during the
No,
presentation
they were
of
residents.
the open
They were
house.
residents of Old Lyme. We went through kind of, were you there? Did you go through it?
the Midsummer Festival.
No. Did you go to the booth?
No,
And what did you see when we went, did you go through the presentation at the booth?
no, I didn't attend.
Okay, well, okay. So how are
Did
you?
you go to any of the open houses that we did at the town hall?
No, I'm talking about, I'm looking at your survey results and I'm looking at your SWOT results.
So those are 2 out of 4 things that were done so far. And there's a bunch of different visions that people have. And one of them includes adding mixed use into Halls Road, because if you look at the history of what Old Lyme originally was, it was based on mixed use. It had housing and stores and businesses all on Lime Street. This is what people are looking for in Old Lyme. And you're certainly welcome to disagree. I don't know what you would like us to be doing because of that. I mean, you give us let me know what you want to see happen. Are you saying we don't want to do any changing? You just want to put a sidewalk in there? Is that your point?
No, I'm just saying, when I joined this committee, I had thought that it was going to be different. I didn't realize it was primarily of changing zoning and putting housing on Halls Road.
Okay, so we're not just putting housing on Halls Road, and honestly, we don't have any jurisdiction about doing any of this other than making it possible for developers to do that. The town is not building any housing. It's up to private developers, and I'm sure your husband's in development, correct? Or construction? He probably is aware that building retail right now is about as dead as could possibly be. So if we ever want to
My
make any
husband, my
changes.
husband has nothing to do with this.
Oh, I thought,
Can I just say, so to try to bring a balanced perspective on this, in the survey on page 22, figure 12, it does have the types of responses that people had, and overwhelmingly they wanted more dining and entertainment options. They wanted bike lanes, more pedestrian-friendly infrastructure. I think the approach of going or seeing if a village district is possible, which would mean mixed use, which would mean, you know, a business could put apartments on its second floor or whatever the case may be. What that does is bring more vibrancy to a neighborhood so that people are walking down the street to get a coffee or are walking to the grocery store or to a restaurant. So I think the intention for any housing is to just bring a little bit of vibrancy to how the retail businesses can be accessed.
Well, but I do think it's, as I said, from all the people that we talked to at the other events, we had an overwhelming desire to have, there's nowhere for seniors to go and downsize in this town right now. They have to leave. And a lot of people came to us and said that would be very desirable. Plus, there's nowhere for young people coming into town to live. And there's no place, very few places, if you're a teacher, a fireman, or someone else looking for a living facility that's not a single family home, you don't have it.
Well, I just am very surprised that this committee is Halls Road Improvement. It seems like maybe should be renamed as, you know,
Well,
changing
before
zoning,
you joined,
changing-
did you look at the minutes from what we've been doing for the last 2 years?
Oh, no, I
Three.
have been. I have been.
Well, and all that's in there. So
Right,
this shouldn't be a surprise. If you read the minutes and followed what we've been doing, should be a surprise because it's all in there.
This is Ray Thompson. I'm so sorry
Okay.
that I'm so late coming in. It dropped off my calendar and I couldn't find it. But this is just a phase of it, Deborah. The previous 3 years were trying to figure out the scope of the possible improvements be. But at some stage, you have to make it possible for the vision to happen. And if it's fully zoned commercial, it is what it is. What are you going to do? You're going to put a box store in there or something like that? It's just not going to happen in this day and age. And certainly given what we're all going through these months, that's going to change the underlying pattern of purchasing, dining, all kinds of things are going to be affected by this distancing that we have right now. So that wasn't part of the reason for beginning the effort to start to think about rezoning so that there was some flexibility to bring some vibrancy to that section of town. It just happens that it's right. We have a rough, I won't call it a grand plan because it's not, or any kind of a fixed plan. It was a skeleton of what might be possible, but right now we have to fill in the skeleton in some way. And this is just one phase of it, is investigating the proper metes and bounds of zoning so that it can be a viable place.
and also within the village district initiative, it's also to try and make it possible so that any future buildings that get built on Halls Road do not look like the majority of what we have there today, which is something that has nothing to do with the character of Old Lyme, which has been loud and clear, one of the driving factors of anything changing on Halls Road is to make it feel more like it belongs in Old Lyme. Right now, we have a strip center that chances are it's going to start to fail more and more with the loss of retail. So this is what's driving these ideas. We haven't just come up with this as a committee. We've heard from the public in multiple meetings and presentations. So, you know, I'm not sure what you would like to see happen or that you're disappointed. I'm not sure what is your goal here in bringing this question up, and how could we help you with it? Because you're on the committee and we want to make sure that you're, you know, that you buy into what we're all trying to do based on what we've heard from the town.
And I think from the survey that I've looked at, people were saying they want retail, they want restaurants, they want things that it's very unrealistic right now. But I do not see how housing and mixed use is really going to be the big driving fact right now. And is that because that's the only thing that's doable since retail is pretty much gone?
No,
Know what restaurants are going to be there? I mean, what, and for the village district, is that just fancy streetlights and so to make it look like the street Sound View?
If you look at Niantic, they did the same thing. They went to a village district. And in doing so, you know, that's mixed use. And so they did have senior housing go down there, which is very attractive. And it's a way to bring people closer to retail and restaurants, walking distance, and a way to add some, you know, boundaries to the types of new development that can be done. It should be guidelines.
And we also had some outside expertise.
Can you back up from your camera, please? Thank you.
We had some expertise from the outside. I mean, Advanced CT worked with 80 municipalities, indicated to us that what we have is just not viable long-term. There's not many.
Oh, I know. But excuse me, Howard, they can say that for the whole state of Connecticut. It's just.
No, they can't.
How
No,
it
they
is.
can't. But and that if you're going to make these kind of changes, you want to at least have the available. If you have these strip malls that die at 5 o'clock, and nobody's in them, they're just not going to last. It's becoming obsolete, and people want to be able to walk to restaurants, to food stores, and other retail and other services. That's kind of the model where successful communities are moving. If you look at Niantic, which you just mentioned, you look at Madison, all of those have incorporated those kind of things. And the ones where haven't are all dying.
Right, but I've been in many towns as I drive around, and whether they have vibrancy or not, the way to go is to listen to what your residents are saying, and I don't feel that you really are.
I think that's a confusing point because unfortunately we've been on this committee I've been on it for 2 years and several people on longer than that. And we have been listening to the community and this is what we're hearing. I know you haven't been on this committee for very long, so you haven't engaged that, but you know, we had 2 open houses and people voted on the things that they cared about. We talked directly with people one-on-one for 4 hours at a time in these open houses. And we did talk to people. It's not like we're just inventing this idea. We're trying to do something to give Old Lyme a real reason to make it feel like it's a nice place to walk down the street and go get a cup of coffee. I mean, we're not trying to say, oh, you know, the developers all want to do residential now, so let's do that just for Old Lyme. But that's not the point here. We've been listening to what people are asking for, and we're trying to address that. We're not working in a void. We're not only listening to our ideas. We're trying to work with the townspeople. So I don't know how to help you kind of engage in that idea because it feels as though you're very adamantly opposed to it. So I'm not sure what you're hoping to achieve.
I'm not sure either, but I just feel like there's so much going on that that looking at EDC minutes and then looking at this other subcommittee, that things are moving very fast. And I feel like this committee's been in existence for 5 years and nothing's going on. And all of a sudden there's a push to change zoning.
Well, don't you think after 5 years, something should happen? We're trying to get
You're
it to
right.
happen the
It's
first
gone a long
year.
time
I
without
think,
it.
I don't know, but you know what? I'm not going to take up any more time on the agenda. So let's just continue.
Okay, let's do it.
I just, one last point, and this, I've only been on the committee since October, but members of this committee went before zoning a year ago, I think, May 2019,
Yeah,
to first start this discussion. So it's been something that's been kind of talked about and sorted out for at least 12 months.
okay, so let's move on to the next piece here. I'm going to just give a quick report on the proposals for master plans. We have 3 different companies, BSC, which is primarily a planning and engineering firm, Newman Architects, which is an architect and urban planning, and Richter Segan, which is also architecture and urban planning. And what we're trying to do is get a cost so that we can have a master plan company help us come up with materials to help get funding for grants for doing the first thing and the only thing that the town can actually do, which is the sidewalks and the very basic landscaping, sidewalks, lighting, all of the materials that we want to do first, which is setting up the roadway and making it a complete street, which is one of the buzzwords you hear a lot out there in the DOT world. So with that, we'll be able to have something to talk to the DOT with, something to apply for grants with, and also something that will provide guidelines for any new development that should happen on Falls Road that would create something that's closer to the character of Old Lyme as opposed to, you know, what the Dunkin' Donuts building looks like, or, you know, what that hideaway complex looks like. So, so with that, we have a set amount of money sitting that was never used. It was originally earmarked for other directions for Falls Road that did not get used. One was for a TIF district, which we were way too early for that, and the money was set aside for it and never used. And the other was we only used a portion of what we thought we were going to use for the Yale Urban Design Workshop. And then we took it over and put together the presentation from the committee. So those are what we're working on. I've gotten a couple of different pieces of feedback. I'm still waiting for some final numbers. But as long as it doesn't exceed, I think it can't exceed the money we have put aside at this point, but which is about 48,000, I believe. So that's what we're working on for that right now. And Ray, do you want to talk about setting up the village district subcommittee, or?
Yes,
Hold on. So Edie, we haven't, what have we, so you got bids out. All 3 of these companies are working on bids, and
Yes.
do you know when we're going to hear back?
I heard back from Newman Architects. And I don't have the information right in front of me, but I didn't want to really get into the numbers until I get all 3 companies.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But I
I'm
think we're talking around the 40,000 mark. BSC is talking something like 20,000, but I don't think that they're really including things like market study and zoning, like guidelines for any future buildings.
yeah. No, I was just wondering what the due date was on the RFP. That's all.
So it's not a formal RFP, which is kind of a
Okay.
problem because, it kind of was organically started by Tim, who said, oh, talk to BSC. So we talked to BSC.
Fair enough.
They have done work in Old Lyme before for Soundview. They're more of a straight engineering firm than maybe involved in design as much. So we talked to them and I think they kind of wanted to get their foot in the door for this. So they gave us a pretty low number. And Newman Architects has given us a number, and I'm waiting on Richter Segan, who we just got recently on board to talk with us about this. So,
Okay. And which was the one that did Hartford Ave for us?
BSC.
It's in Hartford.
Mm-hmm. And I keep asking them to send me their drawings of what the master plan was that they did for that, and I'm not getting it. So I'm gonna have to get them to put it in the mail to me.
That was my last question. I was waiting to see what the Hartford Ave master plan looked like, because that would give me a sense about what we were trying to do for Halls Road.
Exactly.
Sounds like we don't
Yeah.
have a copy.
Yeah.
It sounds like we don't have a copy of that yet.
No, we don't. And I'm gonna, I talked to them late last week for a while, and I told him I keep asking for this, I don't get it, and he's like, oh well, I put it up on this some web share thing, and you should get an invitation to join us, and I never do. So I'll get on him again and get him to send it
Okay.
to us.
All right. I'm done with my question. I'm done with my line of questioning.
Any other questions?
Is that the only one? Oh, go ahead, Ray.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, I just didn't know whether you wanted to move on to the subcommittee meeting.
I just wanted to ask Edie, so Edie, you're waiting for that, and so how do you see this playing out, say, for the next couple of months? What are you anticipating?
I'm hoping Richter Segan was the last group I talked to. I asked them that I could get something by the middle of May. So we're heading into the middle of May now. So I should get something back. I'm not sure how to do this. Do I take it to finance after that, or how to talk to Tim? I mean, I'm not sure, other than us all looking at the numbers and trying to come up with a recommendation. I think
My understanding is that the way carryover works is that our committee has already been approved for that money.
right.
Right.
Now we want to talk with Tim, obviously. Like he's been a supporter of what we've been doing here in general, right?
Yep.
He wants sidewalks. He wants to see the road look nicer. He's on board for all that stuff. But I don't believe we have to go back to the Board of Finance, if I understand things, because my understanding is that when you went and talked to them, or somebody went and talked to them, they said, "Oh, here's you have this money in carryover, so you don't need to talk to us. Get back to work."
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so I think we'll need to talk among ourselves as a committee of looking what the different proposals represent. And unfortunately, they will not be apples to apples, but they will be as close as we can get them to be. And look at their track record and what they've done for other places, and come up with a decision of who we would recommend, and then ask Tim if he would approve that. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we do want to go to the Board of Selectmen at some point, but when we have a choice and
Yeah,
why
it's their
we-
decision.
yeah, what our rationale is for picking that particular company, and yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so the formative subcommittee meeting was attended by the two primaries from zoning, Paul Orzel, who's the current incoming, I suppose you'd say, chairman, and then Jane Cable was there also. She's outgoing in that same position. So they attended. Edie was there, and myself, and I did speak with planning, Harold Thompson, just before the meeting, and subsequent to the meeting, he nominated Barbara Gaudio to participate in the, and I'd almost call it a working group at this point. I mean, we call it a subcommittee only to clarify that it's not part of zoning directly. It's part of this committee, Halls Road. But in a real sense, I believe that it really is a working group because we don't exactly know, where we're going, quite truthfully, as far as what is the scope, what kind of limitations are there. So we need guidance. And as an initial point, Jane Cable strongly suggested that we get a workshop from the zoning enforcement officer, and I've reached out to him. I've only been able to do it by email, and I haven't gotten much of any kind of response really. But she indicates that he is capable of doing that, and I'm truthfully, until I talk to him, I don't really know what a workshop does. Whether we really sit down and say, well, gee, if you're going to have mixed use, it can't all be residential. It can only be on the second and third floor. I don't know whether you get into that kind of detail or not. And Edie, you were in the meeting, and Paul was very, I'd say supportive, certainly supportive, but he kind of had an open view of we as the Halls Road Committee, when we make a recommendation to the zoning committee or commission, he suggests that we keep our scope broad. It surprised me a little bit when he said that. He said, if you want to stick with your master plan, and of course, the only thing that he has seen so far is that master plan that we set out in front of the public and got comments, as Edie was describing, in the past 18 months or so. So, but he indicated that he didn't think that this committee this working group or subcommittee should be large. It should be maybe five or six people, with the understanding that at certain points you might want to bring in specialists who comment on whatever phase it is that you're dealing with. Getting back to Mike's question about, gee, what was Soundview? How did the Soundview Village District come into being? And Paul kind of stepped away from that a little bit by saying, well, I'm not really sure that I would suggest that you follow the pattern of Soundview. The actual document, he didn't seem very enamored of the way it was put together, but he indicated that
it's also very minimal. I mean, it's only 3 blocks on a road, so it's not enough to really build around. I mean, we have other examples of other towns that are doing village districts like Niantic that could be helpful guidelines to look to.
Right. If correct me if I'm wrong, Edie, in my recollection, but he indicated, I think Jane was saying, that we would have to bring a proposal to the zoning commission. Paul backed that up a little bit and said, gee, I'm not sure that's really necessary. We might be the one, once you give us the scope of what you would like to see down the road in terms of limits. And
I think what he was trying to get at was that he was trying to tell us, don't try and write the verbiage of what you think the zoning district should be read as. We would do that. You send us an application with a wish list of the most broad view of what you want to see there, and then we'll help write the zoning that works to that. Instead of trying to work in a very specific way, you could work in a more broad way so that then there's possibilities that doesn't pigeonhole people into corners where they can't build anything because there's such specific details going on, which is, can be a problem if you get your zoning too harsh, so to speak.
Yes.
And he
Yeah.
was also saying, and Jane both were saying, get these subject matter experts, is what he called them, to come into some workshops and, talk to the Flow Grizz and talk to the inns and talk to some other, stakeholders in town that would be useful to buy into what we're trying to get to, so we have their support. I did talk just recently with Becky Bolu at the Flow Grizz, and we had a great conversation, and she was very supportive and said, she'd be happy to join in whatever capacity once things got rolling in that direction. So that was a good conversation with her.
Yes, because we do need to augment the membership a little bit, and I'm not exactly sure where to go, but Jim Carey was mentioned in the meeting. He's an attorney that represents Flow Grizz apparently. I'm not sure whether he would be a subject matter specialist or whether he would be an actual working group member. I have not reached out to him yet, but and then who else was suggested?
There was another. So the other thing that Paul and Jane said was, we should not be on your committee. You should have someone else from zoning on the committee to help you put together your application. And they told us that Maria and, I'm looking for my notes here.
Barnes were the
Right.
two alternates. Yeah.
Right, that they were two people that we should reach out to and see if they would join us, one or the other of them.
And the reason for that, by the way, was that there's a potential conflict of interest for them. So to
Right.
do it properly, they shouldn't be involved in this part of it, even though I would characterize their opinion as being very supportive of the village district. Was
They
that
suggested
correct? Do you agree with that, Ray? And
Certainly, yes. And Jane actually suggested it, I believe.
Yeah.
even
When we presented to them back in, a year ago or whenever that was, they actually suggested, well, what you really want is a village district. They came up with that term. So, we've been just trying to follow through. They're very unhappy with things like the gas station and the hideaway. They really wish there was some way to make it look better. It's not a great road. So.
And I think this is the first time that I can remember that we're actually getting multiple boards and commissions together on the same page, because everyone was working in silos. So in this instance, we have Falls Road, we have the EDC, we have planning, and we have zoning. So we're trying to get all of the pertinent boards and commissions together on the same page going forward.
Yes. I think that was about it. I mean, as far as future steps, we need a couple more people on the group, and so I guess I'll try that Jim Carey, but I'm a little.
I don't think he was suggesting we got him on board,
Yeah.
but I think he said keep it at 5 people if you can.
Yes.
With planning, zoning, Falls Road, and EDC, we're pretty much there. I think.
Well, that's a good.
Some good working groups would be, the extra, experts on their field. Someone has mentioned, could we get Chris Kitchings involved, which would be great, but I've tried to involve her in other things, and it's hard to get her attention for very long. She's great when she's there, but she doesn't always come to every meeting. And it's like, oh, come on, get back.
I think realistically, this is a cart and a horse in a certain way, because, and so it may drag out, because until we have a kind of specific, broad, at least broad brush of where we want to go, which is what you're trying to obtain from the next stage of the plan. You can't really start defining until you know where your
Right.
peaks and towns are. I think it's, kind of a long pull, which it's, been for this committee, just trying to make sure that we're representing the town's feelings and the town keep maintaining and improving the feel of the town. So that's important, but it'll be a process, and maybe I'll be very pleased with what this zoning enforcement officer is able to help us with. Maybe that's where we get our subject matter guidance.
Yes.
I'm hoping.
I think can you try giving him a phone call, or is
I will. I tried that extension 255, but I didn't even get the ability to leave a message unless I just did it outside of hours or something,
I
maybe.
think maybe call Michelle Noren and ask her the best way to get a hold of him. He may not be in the office right now.
Yeah,
A lot of people are working remotely, so.
probably, but I thought I'd be able to leave a voice message, and I tried that a couple times, but it really didn't work. On that.
Okay.
But I did have the email, so theoretically he got it, but I haven't gotten a response. So
Mhm.
I'll have to follow that through.
I think another thing on our agenda is what realtors, developers do we know who could help figure out what the market would bear? At least for, a subject matter expert, I think that would be a good addition. And I don't know if anyone within our committee knows of anybody that they could suggest.
I might, Edie. Let me check with that, kind of what we were talking about the other day, just, on something else, not on this.
Okay.
It might be a person I'm kind of thinking about, has been involved in Old Lyme development for many years and might be a good resource. I could try that person. I don't want to yell out his name on at this point, but
Okay.
let me check and see, and then is that all right?
Okay. Sounds good.
Could I just go back before we just go off the subject? So Ray, what would you say, when are you anticipating like the next zone subcommittee meeting, and where's the next couple of steps with that?
I think from the sound of it, from zoning, that zoning enforcement officer workshop in whatever form or format that is, that probably will be the next step for the committee, because I'm not sure what else we would lay on the table until we have a plan or at least an outline of one.
Mhm.
So I would guess that's it, workshop.
I also want to suggest maybe we sort of need a name for this subcommittee, and maybe we just call it the Village District Subcommittee. That way we're not calling zoning or
Yes,
Falls Road or anything else about it, because it's just keep it clear what we're really on, so.
yeah, that's been problematic when the using as to whether it really is zoning, and they do not want it to be zoning.
Right.
I would,
But if we call it Village District Subcommittee, does that, are there other options? Like, I would be worried if we call it Village District Subcommittee, we would take other options that they may want to look at off the table. Look, I'm not the zoning person, right? I'm just the secretary, but I'm assuming there's other options that are more or less magnitude of regulation change would be greater or less, right? If we call them Village District, do we limit them to Village District?
I mainly was suggesting that because zoning was suggesting that's what we did, so I guess I'm just trying to comply with what they're recommending, but, I get your point.
yeah, I'm not sure what that might, I think you either do village district or you don't do anything with it.
You call it an overlay
Yeah,
district?
I
I don't know.
if you go back to what they did on, Hartford Avenue, they went that route. So I don't know, Mike, but it doesn't sound like there are a range of options. I think you either do a village district or you don't do it.
Yeah.
To add the word exploratory on the title at all?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, that might help.
Yeah.
that might help. Yeah, that would help.
Okay. Sure.
Because
Yeah,
that is,
that's a good idea.
it's a little,
Yeah.
little more accurate too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll
Yeah,
try.
that sounds
And,
good.
and maybe there will be another option. I don't know, but it's hard to think of one at the moment, but yeah, that helps solve it.
Mhm,
I would
good.
suggest one other thing too, right? You might want to touch base with Barbara since she is coming on and just update
Yeah.
her and
Good idea.
she's
Yes,
in the loop and stuff and so she
Yes,
can
I-
report
Might-
back to planning and
Good.
Yeah, I think it'd be good maybe to have not only Barbara, but also nail down which of the other zoning person we want to join us. And if we could
Mhm.
talk with both of them and just see what their take is and who they are and, get to know them too.
Yeah,
We want to kind of build this, before we do a workshop, we need to make sure the committee is a whole, you know?
Point.
So,
point. Yeah, that is the first step really, but they'll
Yeah, yeah.
that happen fairly promptly. So I'll do that.
okay, that'd be great. All right. On here, I see budget realities, cost to transfer Halls Road to a complete street layout. I don't even know did I make this? agenda?
this is what happens when
Yeah,
you
I saw
do
that.
things a few weeks ago. Yeah.
I saw that and I was like, that's
I
okay.
don't know where that came from. I mean, the budget realities are so up in the air. The main thing that I can say that I know about is that with the master plan, the one of its goals is to help us secure some grants to redo Halls Road for a streetscape, for a complete street, which means sidewalks, crosswalks, any new traffic studies, all that kind of stuff is going to cost some money to actually institute and construct. It also will, I don't believe many grants go out for the engineers designing of those things. So that might be something that the town would have to incur that cost. And obviously the first step to getting to any of that is to be talking with DOT with some kind of drawings to show them what we're trying to get to. So, and find out what they would or would not allow us to do. So, basically what I'm saying is you can get grants for things, but it doesn't cover all the costs to do new sidewalks. It typically would cover the cost to do the construction as opposed to the actual design part of it, which is usually less. So that's a good thing. What do you,
That's what
Mike?
happened on Hartford Ave, right? The town paid for the design and then the grant covered the cost, but the installation was like 10x the cost of the design, right?
Right. That's correct. So that's all I know about for the budget realities. I don't know how that got in there or what that was supposed to really be representing, but does anyone have any other business here?
I would just make one observation.
Okay.
In a sense, even though everything going on is pretty negative and horrible, but we do have, everybody is looking at what will happen with businesses on the other side of the epidemic, and they're by where in the process, in the point where we are in the whole process is actually maybe to our advantage because we're sitting back and trying to say, gee, what's going to happen and trying to plan for it. And a lot of other communities aren't going to have that choice. They've already committed to something. And
Right.
who knows what's going to, I hope all the businesses in the Halls Road area survive, but there's a significant chance that a lot of them or some of them or some number will not. And the world is going to change. We know that, especially the business world and retail. And we have an opportunity to make sure that we position ourselves properly for whatever happens. And it's going to be even more important now because towns are going to be under tremendous tax pressure. Every community is going to lose significant portion of their tax revenue. And those communities that are going to do the best are going to be ones that plan wisely for what happens in the future and attract those businesses that will survive. So fortuitously, it's turned out that our timing, I think, on this whole project is good, unfortunately, for what's happening. But we do have that opportunity.
Yeah. And also a lot of people, I mean, the real estate market right now is not doing badly as opposed to what you would expect. Because a lot of
Let me
people
give you,
are leaving
let me give you a very,
into the country.
one thing that we learned from Advanced Connecticut is that there are a whole host of companies looking to move out of New York and into Connecticut. And they are getting calls by the gazoo for looking for opportunities in Connecticut to relocate it because of what's happened. So,
And not just Norwalk, like further afield than that.
right, all over Connecticut. And like I say, the EDC has been approached by a couple of really significant potential business opportunities floating around because of this. So, we are, as we both committees go through this, and planning is going through their 10-year plan of conservation development. We're like I say, I think we've hit fortuitously, unexpectedly. We're in a position to at least try to position ourselves to take advantage of all this.
Couldn't agree more.
And we're going to need the tax revenue. If we sit back and don't, and just let every business die, every town faces that is going to be in serious trouble.
Hey, I just had something pop up on my computer here that says the public beaches within the town of Old Lyme will reopen at a reduced capacity starting Saturday, the 23rd of May,
Good,
between the hours
Good.
of 9 and 6.
great.
I guess they heard people
Good.
saying, we want to go to the beach.
Yeah. The first day it turns halfway warm, that happens.
Right.
Yeah. I spoke to Tim, I wrote him a note and I congratulated him on his efforts and leadership in this area and talked to him. It was obviously a very difficult decision. And I think he was, they were moving about it the right way. And I know he's looked pretty carefully at all the facts and everything. So it's nice to see that this is coming about too.
Okay, so do we have any other business before we adjourn or?
On my end.
I'm here.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn. Ray Thompson.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor? Okay. Well, it was good to have a meeting with you guys and hopefully we'll get some new information for next month. So.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you again.
Okay,
On.
thanks.